Hello everyone. Today I wanted to talk about a 1963 movie called The Executioner. This was released by Criterion in a Blu-ray edition in, I think it was 2016, so it's been around a while. It's one of the ones I got in the recent Barnes & Noble Criterion half price sale. This is a movie that's a Spanish movie directed by Luis Garcia Berlanga, and it stars the great Italian actor Nino Manfredi. So Manfredi is being dubbed into Spanish here, so we don't get his voice, but whoever they chose to dub him, I thought did a terrific job, because Manfredi is just absolutely superb in this movie. Briefly, it is the story of an executioner. We open up in a prison. Two men get out of a van they're from a funeral parlor, undertakers, and they're there to collect the body of a prisoner who has been condemned to death and has been executed. So they bring the coffin in, the family, the witnesses file out, and then comes this little man carrying a satchel. He's the executioner. And he looks like everybody else. He doesn't look like any kind of the Grim Reaper. He looks like a grandfather figure. He catches a ride with the two delivery men from the undertakers, the funeral parlor, and he expresses to them they want to know what it's like to be an executioner. What can that possibly be like? And he's very disarming. He's proud of his job. He says he does it well. He considers himself a maestro in the execution racket, and that some of his victims are thankful for somebody who knows what they're doing. And one victim actually, before the execution began, took his watch off and gave it to him. And in Spain in the 1960s, garroting was the style of execution. That's where you're strangled to death. And that was the preferred execution method of the Generalissimo Franco, who was the all-powerful leader of Spain for many, many decades. And so one of the two drivers from the undertaker's office, played by Nino Manfredi, he starts an acquaintance with the executioner and finds out the executioner has a daughter, meets his daughter. She's very attractive. She is suffering from the obstacle that her father is an executioner, so every time a man gets interested in her, they drop her once they find out what her father does. And Nino Manfredi has the same problem. His girlfriends drop him once they find out he's working for an undertaker. He doesn't want to do that. He has plans to do something else, to escape this life, become a mechanic, go to Germany, was his dream. But he gets sucked into a different world. A world he doesn't really want to belong to. But economic forces, family forces, social forces, the bureaucracy, the absurdity of the bureaucracy itself, everything leads him in a path that he doesn't want to go. Society itself seems to be the enemy. He's on one path, society is on another one. It sounds pretty grim. I assure you it's a comedy. It is a satire comedy, it's a grotesque comedy. It's oftentimes a laugh-out-loud comedy. When Manfredi and the executioner's daughter, he catches them together, he catches them in bed. How are we going to explain this, Manfredi? Well, we got to watch what we say, his daughter says. Remember, he's a killer. The expression on Manfredi's face is truly hilarious. So we have Manfredi. Again, we don't get his voice, but the performance is fantastic. Emma Pinella plays the daughter of the undertaker. She takes her father's occupation with a shrug. It's all she's ever known he's ever done. This was his lifelong job. She's getting older. She's getting a little heavier. And she's on the lookout, and Manfredi is is there for the plucking. But the executioner is played by this great Spanish actor. His name is Pepe Isbert. And I've seen 11 Berlanga films, and Isbert was part of the Berlanga stock company of actors. He is in many of the early films. He's always a terrific performer. He was, in real life, he was, according to the supplements, he was very conservative. Berlanga was not. He was a liberal. He was an anarchist. His movies, but Isbert thought these movies are really funny. I've got to be in these movies, and he might remind you a little bit of Edmund Gwynn, and surprisingly enough, Edmund Gwynn is in an early Berlanga film, but he's not dubbed so well. I mean, you hear this gruff Spanish voice coming out. Here is Isbert, and this is a picture of him down in the bottom there. Just a fantastic performance here and elsewhere in Berlanga's work. And the other thing, in comparison to most, I think there's one other movie that focuses not on an ensemble, but focuses on a much smaller story, character-wise. There's basically 3 characters in this movie. And in the other films, most of them, they're ensembles. They're the society, small town Spanish society. And that I think, that probably plays into why one of the reasons why The Executioner is the one film that it seemed that the Criterion made its way in the Criterion channel and has been, and even in Spain, where Berlanga is revered even today. He's revered as one of the greatest film directors, if not the greatest film director. People refer to the Berlanga touch, just like we say the Lubitsch touch. He had a very unique focus on character, and he made fun of people, but with compassion. So, and the other ones, and all these films they're all in relation to Franco and the dictatorship. Berlanga was making very sly and comic references to Franco's regime, which seemed crazy to the regime itself seemed crazy, and Franco seemed crazy itself, especially to the artistic inclined people in Spain. And so, and I guess one of the reasons why is these films, his films, have, outside of The Executioner, have no, as far as I can tell, no DVD or Blu-ray release ever in Region 1. Region 2, I found some Spanish Blu-rays of his movies, but they didn't appear to have any English subtitles. So let's get to the supplements. There's a tribute by Pedro Almodovar, a very, obviously very popular and famous Spanish director in modern times, and he claims great influence of Berlanga on his films. It's very short, it's only a few minutes, but it's nice to see that the way that Berlanga is remembered, even if it's just in Spain, because I just fell in love with his movies. Then we have a couple documentaries. One is kind of strange, where the director of the documentary inserts himself into the documentary, and I guess he's doing scenes he thought are Berlanga-esque kind of scenes in the movie into his documentary, but he does talk to a lot of interesting people, including the man who edited The Executioner, who is still around. I think this is from 2006, somewhere around there. And Executioner was the only film that this editor did with Berlanga, but he said it was a very memorable experience. And Berlanga pretty much, once he realized how good an editor he was, he pretty much left him on his own. And we also get to see the actual garrote, what it actually looked like. All we see in the movie is the sort of the necklace, the piece that goes around the neck of the person about to be executed. It's a scary sight. Censors didn't want that to be shown to people. Then there's another documentary, and this is a really great documentary. It's talking heads, but I mean, they all have such interesting things to say, and because there's hardly anything that you can find information about Berlanga anywhere in English. You know, it's really, for me, is why I got this. I wanted to learn more about Berlanga and why, and try to figure out why he's not, you know, part of world cinema. It's one of the puzzlements. But they have a portion of this documentary is with Berlanga's son. We see Berlanga's studio, his memorabilia for or his study, and his memorabilia that he had collected for the executioner. And we also meet Rafael Azcona. We're introduced to him, at least, where he was the screenwriter of The Executioner. And it's kind of interesting because he actually started out his film career working for Marco Ferreri, the Italian director. Wrote a couple films with him, Ferreri, early films. And then he wrote a film called Mafiosa. I don't know if you've never seen it. I believe it's in the collection and on the Criterion channel. It's a fantastic film with Alberto Sordi, directed by Alberto Lattuada. When Berlanga and Manfredi read the script, they say, well, this is just another version of Mafiosa. It's the same movie. So they had to change some things around to separate themselves from Azcona's screenplay for the Mafiosa. But they also said that Azcona had done a screenplay adaptation of Franz Kafka's The Castle, but he could never get it made. And he was frustrated with that, so he put portions of his screenplay for The Castle into every one of the films that he would write going forward, a scene here, a scene there. And Kafka's, I think, you know, obviously Kafka influences everybody, every artist of the 20th century, including Fellini. In fact, if you've ever seen the White Cheek, also with Alberto Sordi, early, I think it was Fellini's first film, the kind of humor in that is Kafka-like and very similar, this very similar comic vibe as to what you will find in many of Berlanga's movies. And then the movie was seen as very significant, and they sent it to Venice, the Venice Film Festival, where it got some really good notices. But Franco and the Spanish government didn't want to send that one. They wanted to send a film by, I think it was Jose Bardem. This is Javier Bardem's uncle, who was a prominent filmmaker and a longtime friend and grew up kind of in the film. They actually had a film school in Madrid, right, in the early or the late 40s. I think both of them were graduates, Berlanga and Bardem. But Bardem was a communist, and Franco, who is a perplexing character, he wanted that one to go to Venice and not Berlanga's film. And Berlanga was not a communist. He was liberal. He was sort of libertarian, I guess would be the way he described himself. And they let it go, the censors let it go to the festival without the 4 minutes of cuts that the censors had made for the Spanish, for the version that was going to be shown in Spain. I'm not sure which one it's not made clear. I'm assuming that we're seeing the cut of the film that was shown in Italy. But one of the things I think Franco didn't want the movie to be shown at Venice was in Italy, the Italians referred to Franco as the executioner because he had such an appetite for executing his enemies. I did a video on the other 10, and this Executioner is also included. There's 11 films that are currently on the Criterion channel, and I did a kind of overview of those films because I saw them one a day for 11 days. I really enjoyed it. I'll leave a link to that video. And I really wish I had done one for every movie, and I might still sneak a few of them in there, because I went back and watched a few of them. And I'd have to say, you know, that all these films during Franco's regime, of course, have references, and many references to Spanish culture and topical events that go past me. I don't think you need to. I don't think you really need to know all that stuff to enjoy his films. I certainly enjoy him, and I miss a lot of them. But his post-Franco movies are really incredible. I mean, he did a trilogy late in his career that is some of the funniest satire I've ever seen. If Criterion picks up any more Berlanga movies, I hope they do that trilogy. I mean, they only have part 2 and 3 of the trilogy. I'd love to see part 1. But Placido, the movie that was also written by Azcona, that was before The Executioner, is probably the other Berlanga movie that has the highest reputation, and that's an ensemble piece, and it is fantastic, and it's a hilarious movie. So I'll leave a link to my, in case anybody's interested in Berlanga. But there is somebody else interested in Berlanga, because just yesterday, Solitary Ronin over at his very good, excellent, can't praise it highly enough, YouTube channel, he released a video on The Executioner. So I mean, it's amazing, because Berlanga is so obscure to most movie buffs, that we get a Berlanga video on YouTube on consecutive days. And I'll also leave a link. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch it later today, but I'll leave a link to Solitary Ronin's video on The Executioner for those who are interested. Okay, again, I babbled on way too long. I apologize for that, but I appreciate everybody who has listened thus far. Take care, and I will catch you next time.